Back in 2008, one single document aimed to, well, reshape a huge piece of modern history. Today, we're taking a look inside the Strategic Framework Agreement between the United States and Iraq. This was a really ambitious plan, to transform a relationship that was forged in conflict into a partnership built on cooperation. But how do you actually make that shift? I mean, really, when the fighting stops, what comes next? How on earth do you build a stable, long-term friendship on the foundations of a battlefield? It's a massive challenge. And back in 2008, both the US and Iraq desperately needed an answer. And this was their answer: the Strategic Framework Agreement. The best way to think of it is as the official blueprint. It was designed to lay out in detail exactly how this new relationship was going to work, covering everything from national security all the way to scientific cooperation. All right, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with the blueprint for the partnership itself. Then we're going to dive into its three core pillars: security and sovereignty, rebuilding the economy, and connecting cultures. And finally, we'll look at how it was all supposed to, actually work in practice. So, first up, the blueprint for partnership. You've got to understand this agreement wasn't just about ending a conflict. Nope. It was about writing a completely new chapter for both nations. So, what even is a strategic framework agreement? Well, at its core, it's a formal, long-term game plan. The two key phrases, and these are pulled right from the document's intro, are long-term cooperation and mutual respect. This was a huge signal, a move towards a partnership between equals, not just some temporary fix. And why 2008? Well, there was a ticking clock. The United Nations mandate that allowed foreign forces in Iraq was about to expire at the end of the year. Iraq now had a democratically elected government, so it needed a new legal foundation for its relationship with the US, one that was based on its own consent. Which brings us to Section 2, Security and Sovereignty. Now, this was probably the most critical and definitely the most sensitive part of the whole agreement. This is where they define the new rules of engagement. The goals here were kind of twofold. On one hand, the U.S. committed to helping strengthen Iraq's democratic institutions and its ability to defend itself. But just as important was a promise to work toward regional stability. And, this is crucial, known interference in each other's internal business. That was a real cornerstone of establishing Iraqi sovereignty. Just listen to this line from the agreement. It is a huge statement. It explicitly limits U.S. military action, and it basically reassured Iraq and its neighbors that Iraqi territory would not be used as a launching pad for other conflicts. This clause was absolutely fundamental. Okay, now for the third section, rebuilding an economy. Because this blueprint went way beyond just security. It laid out a real plan for prosperity and for getting Iraq back into the global community. And the economic vision here was, well, ambitious. The idea was to help Iraq invest its own resources into rebuilding, to boost trade, and to join major international groups like the World Trade Organization. There was also a really strong focus on modernizing key sectors like energy and transportation, the absolute building blocks of any functioning modern economy. Section 4 gets into something that's vital for any partnership that's meant to last: connecting cultures. This was about building bridges between people. This part really shows the agreement wasn't just about governments talking to governments, it was about connecting societies. It called for everything from academic exchanges, like the famous Fulbright program, to joint scientific research. It even included projects to protect Iraq's incredible archaeological heritage, like the Future of Babylon project. Pretty cool. So you've got this really comprehensive blueprint for security, for economics, for culture. But how do you actually make it all happen? How do you turn all these words on a page into action on the ground? The answer was a system of joint committees. There was a top-level group called the Higher Coordinating Committee that would oversee the whole thing. These committees were designed to meet regularly, not just to check off boxes, but to actively manage the partnership, come up with new projects, and work through any disagreements. It was really designed to be a living, breathing framework. And here it is, the final signatures put to paper in Baghdad on November 17, 2008. This single image really represents the end of months of intense negotiations and the formal beginning of this new, ambitious chapter. So, if you take away just one thing from all this, it should be this: the entire agreement, every single part of it, was built on one single powerful idea: creating a long-term friendship based on the principle of sovereign equality. So, the blueprint was signed. A new friendship was officially planned out. But, like any blueprint, the real challenge always begins after the ink is dry. What does it actually take to turn a plan on paper into a reality on the ground?